Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Ricky Carson. In this video we're going to be talking about something a bit personal. Not a bit, it's very personal to me. Queer parents, the do's and don'ts of adopting children. And this stems from my own personal experience. I was adopted when I was about 3 weeks old from Hood River, Oregon, by two white lesbians. And I also have a slightly older adopted sister from Ho Chi Minh, Vietnam, who was adopted when she was about 6 months. So this dynamic of being an adoptee, having parents who don't look like you, and I mean, I identify as pansexual, but you know, obviously that wasn't going to be a given, and so having a very different lifestyle than what society is going to expect of you, it was different. And add on that, you know, growing up in a small Oregon town, it was an experience that, like, on paper was fine. You know, I didn't feel like I knew that having two moms was different. It was not traditional, but I never felt like it was wrong. I never felt like, at least in allowing opportunities for me, I don't think it really hindered that much for me. But my parents went into adopting my sister and I in very different fashions. So, for example, my sister was born in Vietnam. She was brought over here to the States when she was about 6 months old, and her identity as being Vietnamese was very much celebrated in my family. We had Vietnamese artwork everywhere. My parents, both of them taught at Oregon State University. One was a history professor and the other was a food science professor. The food science professor mom would invite her Asian, Vietnamese graduate students to come over every Sunday night, and we'd make food. And my sister also had a network of family and friends that were in the same boat as my family, where they had adopted children from Vietnam. You know, they would have celebrations and parties, and it would just be something that would be all-encompassing of the identity of being Vietnamese American. And I was so fortunate enough to be exposed to that, because even though I personally have not been to Vietnam, from my upbringing, I really do love and respect the culture. And even something as superficial as house decor, I know that I definitely want to incorporate Vietnamese artwork in my home in honor of the culture, in honor of my sister, even though we're not on the best terms right now. But for me, my parents did not even the bare minimum. Let me explain that. As I was growing up, I never was around black people. My parents didn't really make an effort to make sure that I felt connected to black culture and black history in the ways that are constructive. My mother, the history professor, she would tell me about, you know, like historical facts, but mainly historical facts around like my people's oppression. It was rare that my house celebrated black art and black excellence. It was more like, this is what has happened to your people by white people over the centuries. And yeah, and it wasn't very optimistic. It wasn't very nuanced. It was very much like, these are the facts, these are the dates, this is what has happened to your people, poor you, kind of language. And when I was younger, like, I didn't really think that much of it. Like, of course I used this information to combat some microaggressions and latent racism growing up in my town, but it never was something that I culturally, like, it resonated with me, just because I was so far removed from the black experience. Like, for example, when I graduated high school, there were 1,300 students in the entire school, and when I graduated, I was one of 5 black students. So that can just tell you how lacking in racial diversity, at least how lacking in black people my school was. And whenever I asked questions about my ancestry or about my adopted parents, because it was an open adoption, I would get very superficial answers. I thought it was really interesting. And this is actually something that separates myself from my sister, because my sister has no idea who her parents are and most likely never will. I had the honor, the privilege of knowing who my birth mother was without going into too much detail, because this is all kind of still very fresh with me. Anytime I really wanted to get to understand myself more, it was just met with such hesitation and just roadblocks. For example, what I mean by roadblocks is I would ask a question, something very, I don't know, I would ask a question, but they wouldn't run with it, you know, they wouldn't like really open up and go into details. And I think that's something that has been very apparent to me growing up over the years, is whether or not you are a parent who personally has insecurities about adopting a child, or are afraid of what the truth might say about your situation, whether or not that's where you're coming from, at the end of the day, the consequences of not being honest and forthcoming with information will rear its ugly head in very destructive ways. This past summer, I went on a trip to Texas to meet my biological birth mother for the second time in my life, and to meet my biological father for the first time ever. And I share this with my parents, and one of them was happy for me, and the other one I thought was happy for me, but a few weeks later when we got into an argument, she used a sleight of hand of implying that this very important self-discovery journey that I went on was riddled with inaccuracies, but none of which that she felt like she actually wanted to confront with me head on. And I'm not surprised by that, because that's been the case for all of my upbringing, is that she doesn't want to confront things, and she's willing to bend over backwards to keep in place, I don't know, maybe a narrative of herself that she wants to keep. But at the end of the day, like, it hurts me, because I'm the one who has to live with the manifestation of your insecurities. I'm the one who has to live with the lack of forthcoming information on who I am as a person. And it's so frustrating to me, because fundamentally they failed me at every road possible when it was clear that I wanted to be connected with my culture. They also failed me by not having a male figure in my life. Like, that's something that you really need to have. I was raised by all women, even our extended family is mostly women, and I felt really alone being a man, well, being a boy at the time. And I felt like from their own lived experiences had all of these prejudices and biases against men. So I would never hear anything really, I would never really hear anything good or productive that a man has done. And I would hear a lot of negativity. And so I would try suppressing my boyhood in ways that kept me from being able to explore who I am, a mixed race, queer guy growing up in the Northwest. I just felt like I had to suppress all of it. Not the queerness, but, well, I did. I never was really, I'm not, my parents don't know who I really am, because over the years, they have shown me that me even just challenging a narrative is just too much for them. And so I had to keep a lot of it to myself. That sucks because I looking back now, I think of all the times when I could have been led down a better path, given advice that would have prevented me from finding myself in precarious situations. There's just a history in my family of me questioning or confronting stuff and being gaslit into thinking that I'm too sensitive, or why are you asking that? Like, what's wrong with you? And these are all coming from people that I like fundamentally trusted, because, you know, when you're a baby and these people tell you like their job is to raise you and to look after you, and that society tells you that they have your best interests at heart, like, you believe it. And I don't want to come off saying like my parents weren't good people. I believe my parents are good people, but I don't believe that they were emotionally mature enough to take on a task of adopting a child, let alone adopting a child from a different racial background. But when I say that, like, I have to also point out to my sister's experience, which from my perspective was the complete opposite, you know, which is hard to digest when you see a sibling get the attention and the appreciation of their identity as they deserve to, but when that isn't returned for whatever reasons. I don't think my parents are racist, but I also don't think that they were ever taught to value or appreciate Black culture, or to even be aware that there is Black culture to begin with. I'm saying this a little bit tongue-in-cheek because, you know, they're professors, so they're not totally ignorant about that, you know, but if they were knowledgeable, they definitely didn't show it. They definitely didn't show it. This video is kind of going all around. I kind of was thinking maybe I should have done like bullet points, but I kind of prefer just speaking from the heart. But as a way to kind of like conclude the video, I would say if you're a queer parent, or if you're just a parent in general wanting to adopt a child from a different racial, religious background than yourself, I would say let's go with three of the most important things to do, assuming, you know, that you're adopting the child for the right reasons and not out of a savior complex, which perhaps I think my parents might have fallen into a bit. With that said, I would say appreciation for that child's diversity, for that different background, and really going out of your way, to make sure that child feels like their identity is appreciated, and that you are actively trying to find ways to integrate that appreciation for their background into their daily lives. Number 2 is, if your child is a different gender than you are, it is important, it is imperative that you have someone in the family unit or a very close family friend who is taking on that responsibility to be that child's role model, to be that person that they can go to for advice. I had to learn to shave on my own. I had to learn how hateful the world is towards Black men. I had to learn how to take care of my hair. It wasn't until a few months ago that I found out how you actually take care of Afro hair. A lot of lost generational knowledge happened because of that. Please make it a priority to have a role model, someone that child can go to, especially when in terms of puberty. Like, gosh, I went through that shit alone, and I really shouldn't have. I don't have any regrets, but I didn't respect my body the way I should have. And, you know, yeah, let's leave it at that. The third thing is be willing to listen. Be willing to confront preconceived notions, ideas, but also be ready to validate what your child is experiencing and feeling, and work hard to get to the ground root of it. And I don't know, just confront the hard stuff, the hard shit. Because your insecurities, as I said earlier, are going to play out in very ugly ways if you don't do it preemptively. I think those are my 3 top advices for you guys. And then hopefully your child won't find themselves in a position that I find myself currently as I'm making this video, where years of mismanagement of my life has caused a great deal of resentment and distrust amongst my parental unit. So much to the point where I'm currently not speaking with one of my moms. But, I think it's also bigger than this. I think this is also a time in my life, like I'm 24, and I'm really feel confident and competent enough to really take control of the narrative of my life and stop the gaslighting and surround myself with people who can help validate the lived experience I've had, will continue to have. With all that said, I do want to leave this video on a high note, because there are many benefits of being adopted by gay parents. First and foremost, I would say open-mindedness. I'd like to consider that fresh out the womb I would have been this liberal and this open-minded, but that's not a guarantee. And from a young age, when you're adopted by gay parents, you really learn how silly people's hatred and prejudice are against people who just want to show love and support for one another and create a family of their own, no different from straight couples whatsoever. And being raised specifically by women, I've learned how to listen, I've learned how to be empathetic, I've learned how to conduct myself in public. That has definitely proven to be an invaluable life experience, because I have a lot of female friends who I feel like we get each other on such a deep level, and that stems from me not being taught, traditional toxic masculinity. At the end of the day, what I went through could happen with any set of parental units. It's just really important to be mindful of the differences. Yes, of course, we're all humans at the end of the day, but if you are not personally mature enough and emotionally intelligent enough to take care of a child with such differences, then it's not the right time for you. Do the work that you need to do on yourself before you should entertain the idea of raising a child, especially a child with such a far different background than yourself. So yeah, if you guys want more content about what it's like being adopted by 2 lesbians, this is a more serious note, but if you guys like this stuff, subscribe, and remember, I post new videos every single day, so make sure you smash the bell notification so you're notified for all future posts. And yeah, I hope you guys have a good one, and peace. Bye.